Hello. Yes, that's better. Good. Hello, up there. So, first of all, I'd like to start with an apology. It's a very deep apology. I can't talk very well. There has been a little over-enthusiastic collaboration during this conference. And as such, that means you're going to get slightly less energetic than my normal, I hope, moderate standard of presentation, which would be more similar to this. I'll be dancing around the stage. Thankfully, I won't be doing that as well because the stage is really noisy. If you keep shuffling around the stage, please someone raise your hands or something. I know it's going to be really irritating for the people later. Secondly, ML gave a really, really, really good talk on Tuesday. If you weren't here or didn't see it, you should watch the video. It had contained about 2/3 of the talk that I was going to give when I first came. So this talk has been hastily rewritten, which is good in many ways. It's been significantly improved. You'll get all exciting new content. Yeah, go and see her talk again. It was really good. And now, my name is Nick Richards. Hello. I am product manager. I work on FlatHub, amongst other things. I've worked on GNOME stuff for years and years and years and years and years. But I am also one of the few GNOME Foundation members who is also a KDE member. Thanks to the magic of FlatHub, contributing across everything. I'm a former product manager at Endless, that's the marvelous computer I'm using. And at the moment now I work for a company called Lucid, who are of no interest whatsoever in open source apart from paying people to provide services on open source code, which is good too. That was also one of the themes, mostly servers though. What is product manager? Christian knows he's not here, it's very sad. But, so he wrote a really, really good blog post, which I will encourage you to look at. This one doesn't have the URL, but I'll publish some stuff later, which does. So, he says this: they take feedback from everywhere. They do all kinds of cool stuff. You can read that. Most importantly, the role is leadership. It's kind of interesting, idea of a leadership type role in a an organization or a sort of an area which is historically driven by coders scratching their own itch. But what does a product manager actually do? Because I mean, that kind of tells you what you're supposed to do, but what do you actually do? Hopefully, I'm going to give you a bit of a clue for some of that stuff. You tell a story. So every application has a story. They speak about like the point of view of the application, who should be using it, what the where it can fit into your life as a person or a user, and those which have really compelling stories and stories that that really resonate with people are those that are very successful. So you then integrate all the things. You get feedback and you get stuff coming from all over the place. And product managers' jobs are to really be the inverse of the person who goes and sits in a dark corner and just codes stuff all the time. It's a very important role to plow your own furrow like that. But this is much more about trying to integrate stuff together and keep people on the same page. That story part again. If you can tell everyone the same story, then they'll basically be kind of working it out themselves. And thirdly, your role is to maintain standards and to say it's not quite good enough. It's not really what we're trying to do here. But kind of, when you put it down to it, it's just saying no in a nice way. A lot of the time, it's a improv style, no but. What can we do next? How can we go from here to there, where we both want to go? Or have you considered if we turn this contribution around in a slightly different direction, it can work a lot better and we can integrate it and we can all be more, all meet everyone's goals. So, does it sound like a great app maintainer? Yes, basically it does. So why do you care? Pretty much everyone who maintains apps here is doing it successfully, otherwise they wouldn't have come all the way here. You do this already. But I think that Christian can talk about this. He says, I spend all my time doing this stuff. It wears me out. It tires me out. It's not fun. I'd prefer just to spend my time coding. So you can either get some help from someone like me, or maybe I can help you do it a bit more efficiently. So let's do it better. This is an exciting example of some highly proprietary visual design for the MeeGo tablets right there. and that is Thunderbird bad. Look, you can save much more space with this exciting way of writing an email composer. So, we'll go back again. What are the tasks that we're trying to do? We're trying to find the story, identify all the things, and then we're trying to maintain standards. We're not going to talk about all of those during this conversation, but we'll give you a bit of a go now. So, how do you find your story there? These days, pretty much what everyone does when they're making programs is they write a list. That list is a set of requirements that the thing has to do. It might be a README file in your repository. It might be a wiki page. It might be some kind of exciting long Google Doc. It might be all kinds of stuff. But it says, what is the thing going to do? Okay? Then you turn this list into tickets. Oh, isn't this fun? You can have loads of tickets. Here's some gedit tickets. Look, some of these are bug tickets. Some of these are features. Some of them are just like people expressing their points of view. Cool, great. So you're thinking, I've got requirements. I can go through these requirements one by one and I can turn them into tickets. You have already lost. You're lost, I tell you. You haven't thought about where you're trying to get to here. Like, this is the absolute classic thing that people do in terms of incremental improvements for your project. It's sort of being driven by the backlog, being driven by a few of the things that people do or tell you need to do, and not really thinking about why are we trying to get to there. What's the most important thing? The thing that a product manager or product thinking can help you do is identify what's the most important thing, then let's do it now. The other stuff may be helpful, but is it important? So, what you need to do, you need to find some of your story. Great apps have a point of view. I love GNOME Builder. It's one of my favorite applications. I use it all the time for a variety of things it wasn't designed to do, including writing lists, all kinds of stuff. But one of the things that I think is most inspiring to me about this is how clearly Christian had a point of view about this application, about what he wanted it to do, what he didn't want it to do, the ways he wanted people to be able to contribute to it, the areas where other people would be able to extend it, and how kind of the world he wanted to create out of this. You know, what would an ideal world for this application be? And then try and move the world more towards that. You know, if we could all be that good, I would be. But so, how do you find all of this story? If you're not Christian, if you don't have this thing that you've been spending 15 years thinking about. So it's a mixture of your internal drive and your user satisfaction. I mentioned earlier about the classic open source scratching your own itch theory. I believe that's actually very important for really, really good applications, particularly those that live in a kind of an open source world where monetization currently is less good than we'd all like it to be. You really are going to need a lot of internal self-starting, but also something that really satisfies your needs. You know, like, there is a reason why there are quite so many music players available, right? People like playing music. They like doing this. They have very strong opinions about it. And if it works for them, I mean, that's great. Like, this is the kind of thing that is, why is it self-starting? Why does it work? Still not quite sure why we have so many clocks in the world, but that's a different question. So, what's a good first step? So you've kind of you've probably worked out your own internal drive already. I can't really tell you what that is, sadly. But I can tell you some other stuff. So, write some things down. So, what I'm going to tell you is, think about the application you're working on. Write down every single potential competitor that you can think of in about 25 seconds. No one's writing, but that's okay. I'm going to do it in a second. So, just write down all that stuff. Proprietary, free, different platform, completely left field. You know, if it's a to-do list, the answer might be sticking stuff on the fridge is actually a competitor to my share of time. It might be that people would prefer to watch Netflix rather than make lists, like all this kind of stuff. So, I'll give you an example for FlatHub because it's easier that way, and it's what I spend most of my time caring about. So, here are some things. Snap, obvious competitor. Google Play, literally someone we could be inspired by or compete with. Apple's App Store, distros, that's a way people get applications. Windows Store, App Image, strange but true. So, for the list, how does each one of those things reach the user? What problems are they going to solve? What is good or bad about them? What's easy or hard to copy? So just kind of, write all of those down kind of off the top of your head. So I'll give you an example from the top there. A very low resolution version of Snapcraft. I'm very sorry for that. That was supposed to be a significantly better thing, but I blame low DPI. So Snap reaches the user through preloading in the most popular Linux OS. It's a very good way to reach the user. It has a really, really great developer outreach story, as we literally just heard, and also some really, really good websites for finding this stuff. And it's very easy to get started with if you're already working on Ubuntu, which, as previously mentioned, is the most popular Linux OS. So you're kind of going to be likely to at least know a little bit about it. It's a strong assumption. Some of the implementation details have historic warts around them, based on where it comes from, around the phone. And there's a bit of a store lock-in to an Ubuntu managed service, which strength or weakness, but it is what it is. So, so what do I say from that? What does this imply for me? Actually, there's one other slide before I have to do that. So, examples of people who do this really well. GNOME design team are really, really excellent at doing this. These wiki pages which have, what are we kind of doing at the top? What's our goals? What are non-goals? Here are some relevant art. Look, this application settings on the Mac, this is what Elementary do about it. This is what Windows do about it. This is what iOS does about it. It's not going, start your photocopiers. It's just going, how have other people tried to solve the same problems? Or alternatively, if we look at the goals and non-goals, are these actually the same problems? Like maybe there's a good reason why we shouldn't fall into this trap of just copying these people because we're trying to do something different. It can be very, very, very helpful. So, what does that imply, that Snapcraft example of what FlatHub should do? I reckon they should concentrate on preloading. How do we get to the user out of there? They should improve the developer outreach story. They should collaborate with Snap on the stuff where it makes sense, like XDG portals. And there's a little bit of a slide here I need to move. They should concentrate on improving the overlapping tech, because that's an area where it can improve both sides. There's a weakness on one. And as a point of differentiation, maintain that diversity of app sources, because otherwise that is literally wouldn't exist. I can assure you of that. I was product manager at Endless when we selected the thing. So coincidentally, that's pretty much exactly what the Flatpak team and FlatHub team are doing. Good news. I hope so. If you have other things that we should be doing, do let us know. So it moves from, again, how this gives us some strength to say no in an encouraging way. So when we talk about things where you're like, okay, cool, in the Flatpak world, we could do this thing that will only work on one particular repository. Obviously, that isn't going to work, because if we're doing things that only work on one particular repository, like, why does this thing even exist, right? It's completely against the raison d'etre. But at the same time, you can say, hey, maybe we should go out there and try and work with other people and other applications and try and work with upstreams to better use portals, because fundamentally there's lots and lots of different ways that people are going to do this thing, and that's going to improve the user experience when people get their apps working in FlatHub and in Flatpak and in Snap and in even AppImage, if they ever work out a way to put stuff inside a container. But up until this point, all we've done is use your brain, okay? So, Galaxy Brain answer. That isn't really the only way of collaborating with stuff and making great applications. It's a really good part. We found our intrinsic motivation earlier on. We've now found sort of the world that we're operating within. Now we need to talk a little bit more about what feedback should we listen to. Very important. How do we integrate that feedback in there? But actually, we need question 0. How do we get feedback? Not what should we listen to, because if you're listening on the wrong channel, you're going to get a lot of bad stuff. Where do we get feedback? Do we get our feedback from Phoronix? It's a source. Do we get our feedback from Twitter? It's a strong response. Do we get our feedback from a series of cats? That's mostly where I get my feedback from, that provides the love and success that I need to keep going every day. But there are some good places we can go. So we can get feedback in person. There are some really good examples earlier today of let's go and interview some people. Sounds good, like a good idea. Let's talk to people at these kind of conferences. Again, there's been some really great collaboration that we've had, and that has corrected some stuff that we were going to do wrong, that has given some ideas about things that we could do better in future. GitLab, it's a good source. I'm not going to say that a bug tracker isn't a good source of doing this thing. Discourse, IRC, press reviews. Again, people who are kind of interested in the area but dispassionate, they've probably got some good ideas. Blogs, fewer ideas, but they're okay. Forums, user testing. Again, user testing is really important. You've got to recognize the strengths and weaknesses of user testing. You've got to know what you're trying to get out of it, the kind of context the person coming into it has. Apps is a little bit different. If you're working on desktops, that's something that people use pretty much every day, the whole time. So they might be more willing to take more of a training load on board for a more complicated application. But again, that's also similar to stuff like a non-linear video editor, where people do this for their job, right? You know, like this is something that they do every single day, versus a to-do list thing where there are 200 of them and you can switch, and it kind of, if it's in any way annoying, it's going to go. So, great products never listen in just one way. I think that's the important, really important message. The big difference between kind of companies like Apple, who have a very strong intrinsic drive and spend a lot of their time listening to themselves and to user testing and to do all that stuff, and companies like, say, Facebook, who are incredibly metrics driven. Okay, I'm not saying you should be one or the other, but there are, recognize what the strengths and weaknesses of your position are and different ways to listen, and ways that you can get access to people or to feedback more easily. So, Endless has metrics, somewhat controversial, but they're really good. You know, for a product manager, they're good. I can tell you that Nautilus is the #1 most used GNOME application. It probably won't surprise you too much. File managers are kind of a useful thing, but it surprised me the first time I saw it, because I thought that our users didn't really use files that way. I learned something different. You can also, using these kind of metrics, instrument actions within your application. So you can set, you know, if there's something that you're trying to test, some new stuff, you can find that out. Obviously, you need to make sure that that this is done in a privacy-preserving fashion, not least because it's literally the law, but also because it's trust. It's very important. This can tell you something really important. I would strongly recommend, if you work with a large enough organization that you can afford to set up the infrastructure you need, and that you can deal with the regulatory burden, make that happen for you. Or get metrics-like information in some way or another. But all this is telling you is the what. I can tell you Nautilus is opened loads and loads of times. I can tell you it's open for a very long time. Doesn't tell me why. Doesn't tell me anything about the why. I can know all kinds of stuff about, cool, this button is clicked on 4,000 times. Great. The one next to it is clicked on 200 times. Maybe great, maybe not. Maybe one of them is close application. And I don't want actually anyone to click that button. I want them to keep it open the whole time. I'm not sure. That's why, you know, if you just take metrics on their own, if you just take user feedback on its own, you're not really getting anything. You need to integrate that whole picture together and use your judgment a little bit more. So, one of the reasons why you're going to need to do some of this stuff is because I would strongly encourage you to disintermediate and get access to the user as much as you possibly can. Use something like Snap, use something like Flatpak, use something like AppImage. I mean, fundamentally go around to the user's computer and put it on there yourself. If you're trying to do this, trying to work out this kind of thing here, the why, that means you're going to be iterating. As I think Alex said earlier on, if your iteration cycle is you know, at the speed of a distribution release cycle, you know, that's not helping. Like, I want to get 3 releases out in a week. I want these people to be upgraded. I want to be able to see stuff. I want to see how this works. You know, you can't afford to be held back by the slowest possible application. Yeah. Also, like, control your own stuff. It's easier to get bug reports. You know, there's different talks about this. So, we found all of this feedback. We've written it all down. We've thrown half of it in the bin. Those were actually the designs for that thing I showed you earlier. In retrospect, I realise that now. And what are you going to do with it? So, what you need to do is you need to write that down yourself. I can't really help you about integrating that stuff. That is kind of literally what product managers do. And it depends completely differently on each situation that you're in. But you need to weigh all of these bits of feedback separately. You need to compare them against where the potential strengths and weaknesses you have in the market. What opportunities do you have to satisfy that customer better that you've created, or the market that you've done? Or maybe even just looking at it, you're going, actually, you know what? Success for me is just making this thing for myself. That is perfectly valid. That is the story that you're telling. You've integrated all of the feedback there, and the standards you only have to maintain are for yourself. You know, it's true. And 1 second. Yeah. So, very important here. At the start of this, you started off with no plan, no clue, or potentially no plan and a clue. I'm assuming that, you know, one of these two things. Via the implementation of product fairy dust, the intention is to move further up, either to the top left. I can't help provide you with clue, I'm afraid. That's kind of your own job. Or to plan and clue, which is the dangerous area. This is an area that one of the senior managers at Intel told us about. I was particularly enjoying. You'll notice on all of these things that basically I've just been telling you about how to deal with the first problem here, and not really talk too much about the second two options. This is kind of deliberate. I've quite enjoyed my time at this conference. I'd like to come back and give further talks. So consider this as a trailer. Yeah. Consider this as your watchword. Aim for plan and clue. So, summing up, every single person is making a product. I mean, basically everyone here is. You can get more deliberate about making that product. Whether you like it or not, you're doing all of this work already, but just think a little bit about it. It's not very hard. You know, we just did it in 25 minutes. I can do it for you until I have to get on a plane later today if you buy me a drink, and we can have a talk about it afterwards. Or later, we can have lots of different conversations. Get a diversity of feedback. Products are better when they're made by more diverse viewpoints. Whilst it's really, really important to have that strong vision, moderating that is where it turns into kind of a superpower. Okay, so it's not about moving around and being just swayed by whatever the last person on Bugzilla told you to do. It's about combining those two things together. And that needs some discernment. Yeah, so you need to be discerning of what is sensible feedback, what is within your story, where you should just go, hey, this sounds like you should actually use this product over here. You should use that thing over there. Like, if you're trying to make something that you really believe in, you shouldn't be scared of someone else using something else. There's significant billions of humans in the world, and you do not need all of them to use your stuff. You are not Apple or Google. I can guarantee that. I've seen the attendee list. So, questions? Chats? Impromptu claps? Oh, not so bad for time. I thought my voice sounded quite well, actually. No. Yes. Question from the back. I like it. Ladies and gentlemen, ocular maintainer.
So, you mentioned saying no positively, but that's one of the biggest issues I have, right? It's like when people propose something, they propose it because they need it, and sometimes they think nobody has thought about that before, and it's like in their mind, it's like the most brilliant idea anybody has ever had. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of, I personally have a lot of problems shooting down people, saying like, yeah, you know, like maybe that's not so a really good idea. So
right, and also like kind of, if you're particularly nice about it, which I know everyone in this room will definitely try to be, it can be a real drain on your time to kind of recapitulate the last 20 years worth of product decisions you've had to make about why or why not you're doing this. If you're trying to say no in a nice way, yes, it's really difficult. I think one of the things that it depends on the situation. sometimes you just have to say, no, seriously, you're being a person who is violating the code of conduct. But I think one of the things there is try and help that person think from another person's point of view. So if they're saying, yes, I need this, help them to think, okay, how many other people need this? What changes need to be made to this contribution you want to make in order for it to be valid? How are you, the person who is contributing this thing, going to defray my maintenance time? How are we going to help work together to make sure that this is bug-free? Is there any extra testing you can help me with in order to get this? It's about, trying to create empathy for them, for you, and for the end user, because a lot of the time those people definitely haven't spent all that time thinking about it. But yeah, it's the hard thing, right? This is why people are paid to be product managers and don't just do it out of the goodness of their own hearts all the time.
Right, thanks.
Cool. I'm looking forward to the gift.
Thank you. This is for you. Give him a big hand. Okay, we are a few minutes away from starting our lightning talks. Please be here. How does the metrics daemon work? This is very exciting. If anyone does currently or formerly work at Endless, to see whether I can remember. It's an open source daemon that, so basically stuff sends dbus messages when things happen to a metrics collector, which runs locally, compresses stuff, adds jitter, does a bunch of different things to privacy preserve it, links it against a machine ID. Periodically, that then gets uploaded to a metrics service in TechCloud. There's ways of doing back off and compression and all that kind of stuff, but it adds very, very limited amount of bandwidth usage, almost no memory. It's just kind of data points of this particular metric here happened this time. So for application usage, for example, so length of thing, when it started and when it stopped. There's some similar stuff for a bunch of things, but you can see all of those metrics trace points in Endless GitHub, or talk to Rob, who I think has probably gone to the plane right now. It's all open source stuff, and any application can do it. Obviously, if the collector isn't there, nothing will happen. The thing back when I worked at Endless, I would always tell people was, if you're an application developer and want to see your metrics, come talk to us and we'll make it happen for you.
obviously the ones that were actually instrumented with like click metrics and stuff were all endless applications themselves, because we were trying to work out, in the encyclopedia, did people search? Did they browse? How long did they spend on things? Did they click on links inside there? What did they always come in via using the global search? Yes, the answer is. So during GNOME initial setup, there's a screen about do you want to allow metrics? Yes or no? Default no. Actually, it's default yes in some countries, but yeah. Was there pushback or contention? It was never controversial. No, because Endless was not targeting and is not targeting the traditional desktop environment. Like it doesn't consider itself to be a competitor, really. To Endless users don't even know what the hell Ubuntu is, let alone anything else. The other systems they use, like Android, iOS, Windows, all have these things in. But no. I'm sorry it's the first you've heard of it. I did a very bad job of explaining it previously. It's pretty cool. Yeah. They would freak the hell out. Yes, they would. The installer stuff. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. And like, for example, they're super happy to do the Steam hardware survey. It's one of those where like it's where you sit in the sort of the trust, clue, privacy preserving person continuum, and it was more controversial for engineers inside Endless than it was for Endless users. But you can turn it off. I turn it off. Works. Yeah. A product owner doesn't have to be a product manager. It can just be like an expert in the area. So like imagine you are imagine you're making a like industrial controls machinery. So the product owner is the person who runs that machine, and they're telling you, the programmer or someone else, like, yes, this is good or no, bad. A product manager is kind of basically like a generalist superstar who doesn't have specific knowledge of that area. You can take the role of a product owner in a Scrum team, and almost always you do. But you kind of have more of a kind of an oversight area. Does that help? Cool. Right. Yeah, kind of the thing that I always say is basically like you can do one or two of the really deep skills within any software team well, and you can fake the rest of them and kind of fill in where necessary, so you can call people on bullshit, and generally kind of like you can do any of that stuff. That's kind of the ideal Swiss Army knife kind of role. But yeah, it varies. It's different at different projects. It's different in different companies. Yeah.